Welcome to another strangely titled Rugby League Down South. On today's programme we'll talk Broncos facts and figures with journalist Nigel Wiskar. We talk to HEMEL about their Challenge Cup draw and dual registration, London Skolars too about their cup draw trip to Sheffield and having a couple of byes in the last few weeks. We also speak to the latest London Broncos debutant, ATELEA VEA, I think that's the correct pronunciation. And thank you once again if you're now downloading this podcast via the totalrl.com website. If you haven't seen it yet, I've even got its own podcast menu at the top of the page on totalrl.com, and also on the website details of getting access to League Express, Rugby League World, etc. if you want to download the digital versions to your various reading tablets or in fact do the subscriptions to get them sent to you in the post. All the details there. Now, some good news. Broncos under 19s won their first game of the season, 52 points to 18 against Wakefield at HEMEL. I think that's round 3 of the season for them, but a victory and a comprehensive one over Wakefield. Congratulations to the Broncos under 19s. Fingers crossed there is plenty more of those in the rest of the season. However, Broncos crowd of 1,017 against Wakefield in the Super League was their lowest in the recent era, really. The lowest for a long time, if not their lowest ever. But does it really matter? Rugby League is a sport obsessed with crowd numbers and attendance figures, but really, does it matter how many people you get in your stadium? Is it that the more worrying aspect is that the number that paints, or the picture that number paints, about the current state and profile of the club? Now, I am told that Broncos are to set up some sort of marketing or commercial ventures in the coming weeks. A great step, in my opinion, if so. More news potentially on that in future Rugby League Down South podcasts. And also, if you live in the HA8 postcode around the Hive, I'm told Broncos did a 10,000 leaflet drop in the area ahead of the Wakefield game. So I wonder whether you got one of those leaflets through your door if you live in postcode HA8. Now, I did catch up, though, about numbers, facts and figures with the Sunday People assistant editor, Nigel Wiskar, to talk about with a man who obviously follows rugby league in the South very well, very involved in the sport as well, as to what he makes of the importance, the image, and whether it really matters. A crowd of just over 1,000 for Broncos at the weekend. Rugby League is obsessed with facts and figures and crowd numbers in particular. Does it really matter that Broncos are only getting 1,000 people in?
Well, it does. It does, Ian. I was looking earlier. There was a statement from Nigel Wood, in charge of the Rugby League, of course, a year ago, when he talked about the long-term viability of London. He said they had to be credible, he said they had to be contenders, and he said we had to make sure that they have a decent attendance. Now, sadly, they're failing on all 3 criteria there, and attendance is one of them. I wasn't at the game over the weekend, but a friend tells me that probably over half that attendance was from Wakefield as well. So we really are down to the bare minimum, sadly, now at London.
You say sadly, it's disappointing. You know, the club isn't in a great situation. There are, I'm told, things that will be done to try and get more people in and market the club and increase their commercial aspects over the next couple of weeks and months. But I guess it is the most important thing is it's disappointing to see only that number of people watching or wanting to watch a Super League game.
But how do you sell a losing team as well? That's the other problem. We can talk about marketing, and it's something that, having spoken to players at the club over the years and coaches at the club, the one consistent thing they all have said is that there isn't enough marketing done at that club. It's one thing spending money on overseas players, but without directing the public of London to the fact that they're actually playing rugby league and wherever they are in London, it's fairly pointless. And unfortunately, at the moment, we're seeing, arguably the weakest London team, that there's been for since the days when they're in a second division. Now, why would you want to go and see that? The brutal reality of professional sport these days is people want to see winning sides, or at least sides that compete. And the hand that Tony Ray's being given, where he's had to choose a side, sort of with no preparation whatsoever, and taking players that effectively nobody else wants to a certain degree, it's an impossible task. And so, why would people want to go and see that? And I say that as somebody that, where the Broncos are close to my heart, but why would you want to go and see a losing team week in, week out?
So do you see their numbers improving potentially this year or not?
I don't, if I'm honest. I mean, you're looking at that. They do have some of the bigger clubs to come to town, of course. So Saints, Wigan, Leeds, they've all to come, and they will bring more fans. And you'd like to think that will encourage more home fans to attend as well. When you've got,
but you can't rely on away fans, can you?
No, you can't. But it will bump it up slightly, and hopefully, it would encourage more home fans to come and see if you've got the bigger teams there. I mean, my personal bugbear is the fact they play on a Saturday. I'm a great believer that they should play on a Sunday. I think there's more potential on a Sunday. It's for twofold reasons. Firstly, you have the opportunity where clubs within the Southern Conference can come and actually watch their professional side. So, like Elmbridge Eagles and Medway Dragons, and my own club, Sussex Merlins, they took about 120 people to Wembley to watch the semi-finals of the World Cup. Now, they're not going to bring 120 every week to Broncos, but they might bring 10, they might bring 15, they might bring 20. But the juniors are playing and the seniors are playing on a Saturday, so there's no way that they can physically go and watch the professional team. And you combine that with the attendance, with football. Broncos. Bear with me here, Ian, because this is a real nerdy one for the stats people out there. But I looked at Broncos' opening game of the season, and when they lost to Salford, and on that day in London there were 9 professional football matches going on. Chelsea, Arsenal, West Ham, Palace, Charlton, Brentford, Leyton Orient, Wimbledon, even Dagenham and Redbridge were all at home that day, that afternoon when London were playing. It was just under 200,000 people were watching professional football. 188,811. I know you like that statistic. Now, clearly we're not going to get another 10,000 coming to London, but you're just not giving yourself any chance when you're going up against the dominant professional sport in the market with a 3 p.m. Saturday kickoff.
I've always said, though, Nigel, that whatever the strategy is for Broncos, for the Hive, for Barnet, however you want to see it, surely they can't plan their strategy around other sports. You must have your own strategy, and I mean, that may well point, as you say, towards a Sunday, but you can't say, well, there's a Six Nations game that day, or there's this happening the other day, therefore we're not going to play on that day, can you? You've got to have your own strategy.
I think you can, and I think it's one of rugby league's great failures in the past is to not look at the Six Nations calendar, for example, in the past, and we suddenly put ourselves up against. But
they have games they've had a Friday game, haven't they, this time, and Saturday and Sunday?
Sure, I mean, but their fixtures, unlike rugby league's international fixtures, the rugby union's international fixtures are brilliantly organised and put out there a long way in advance. So there's no excuse. So you can look at them and think, well, hang on a minute. Do we want to be playing? When they were playing at Harlequins, I mean, to be fair, they weren't allowed to when England Rugby Union were at home. But I think you've got to look at every conceivable margin to get people through that gate. And if it means looking at the football fixture and thinking, hang on a minute, there are 9 London clubs at home that day. This is madness. Let's play on a Friday night permanently or play on a Sunday permanently.
As far as you're concerned, sort of who is responsible for this as well? Because they got a split deal where, Barnet and the Hive look after the match day. Broncos basically just look after the team and that's it. Barnet take the takings of a match day, so you'd have thought they would be wanting to increase the crowds. Broncos, in a way, not having much, if anything, from a match day experience in terms of finance, I guess don't really care.
No, I mean, it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, the hand was somewhat forced into this relationship. I mean, that's not to say it couldn't long term hopefully be a profitable one, but they didn't have too much time to come up with another plan. I realistically think, that I honestly don't know the answer to that, Ian. I really don't. We can say more marketing, change the day. Who's to blame? Well, I mean, the club are ultimately to blame. This is now, we're another season, we're at another ground. Every year clearly the club is losing fans, and you're shifting them from one place to another, and there's only so much patience sports fans can take, I'd imagine.
If Broncos don't necessarily take the match day income, and therefore they're not looking to it's not in their interest to build crowds, surely it must be their interest to build crowds for other reasons, such as their brand. They must want people to be watching rugby league and watching Broncos if they're going to make something of the Broncos name and the brand in the future. And also, the more people they get, the more they look like the premier tenants at the Hive, surely, and that gives them bigger bargaining force for extending a deal.
Absolutely, and also commercially, you want to be selling more shirts, don't you? They've actually got, I think the London kit this season is probably the loveliest kit they've ever had. It's a great, really iconic kit, that, and you want to be shifting that at 50, 60 quid a pop, don't you? You want to be selling hats, you want to be selling cuddly toys, you want all that comes with more people through the gate equals more revenue in other ways off the field. It's not just the people actually physically walking through the barriers. It's about the merchandise. I mean, I'm assuming Barnet take the takings from food and drinks at the ground, but all the other stuff should be London Broncos, and it all counts, and if they're only getting 1,000 on now, whereas. It doesn't seem that long ago, when I used to go to Brentford a lot, and there'd be a good 4,000 or 5,000 on there, and that felt like a proper night out. And the game, the club was thriving then in those days, of course, and now it's definitely at a low ebb. There's no point trying to gild the lily. Things aren't great.
I've just been looking down a website of various crowd figures over the last sort of number of years, really, for the London club. There was an 800, I think, in a Challenge Cup game a few years ago at the Stoop. There was a 500 against Halifax in an old competition back in sort of 95 or so. But they stand out as sort of the anomalies in the list. They're in the thousands. There was a 12,000 against Huddersfield, I've just seen, in about 2006. Those days aren't too far gone, really, when you talk about massive big numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually a St Helens fan for my sins, Ian, and I remember when they played Saints on the opening game of the season.
Yes, yeah.
At the Stoop, and I think there was 8,500 on that day.
Yeah, back in about 2006,
there was a huge,
7.
And I actually think I was at that game that had 800, which I believe was against Dewsbury.
It was.
I was at that.
I was there too.
So, I've seen sort of, I mean, to be fair, the Challenge Cup does have those anomalies. And,
yes.
And it's not just London that suffers at the hands of those things. There'll be other poor attendances, in the last round. That's another sort of yarn for another day, isn't it? What's going wrong with the Challenge Cup? But you just wonder now, I think also, if away, I know we can't count on them, but away fans are more squeezed, aren't they? So the days of St Helens probably bringing 4,000 down that day or whatever they did, those days have gone. We ask a lot of them, don't we? There was a World Cup last year, and it's an expensive business these days. Petrol's expensive, people, everybody's squeezed. We've had the budget today, so people will be squeezed even more. So,
and I mean, two-pronged question: where do you stand on licensing? And is it fair to say that if licensing was still here, Broncos would probably not be looking at a license next year anyway?
I mean, my take on licensing is that it was a convenient thing at the time, and since has just all the criteria to it has just been subsequently ignored.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, if you go on attendances, healthy attendances, well, Broncos have had it, haven't they? Basically, and you look at all the club that's way up at the top of the table now, Castleford. Their ground doesn't fit the licensing standards, and yet. Who cares, to be honest? They're getting 8,000, 9,000 on, and suddenly everything's rosy at Castleford now. So the licensing thing, rugby league is one of its great sort of selling points is that it's not afraid to be innovative, but also, in my opinion, it tries too many things and comes up with something like licensing 1 minute and then conveniently forgets about it when it doesn't quite work.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar. I'm probably on the other side of the fence. I like elements of licensing to an extent, and I think if implemented, it can work. But yeah. I think that you'd be looking at Broncos potentially not being on the right side of the fence if that was still the process as for next year. Just finally, then looking at their numbers, we sat down and recorded a discussion for Super League TV with Tony Ray and Joe Mabou, where we talked about the game in the south, London in particular. But the worry is, I think, and it's always the case, isn't it, that people see Broncos and judge rugby league in the south on what Broncos do. And one, that's inaccurate, but two, it's understandable. And that is one of the most frustrating thing, I guess, for anyone who's involved in the community game, that if only Broncos were doing better than they were, because then people would look more favourably on everything else that goes on.
Yeah, no, that's very true, Ian. I mean, they're the flagship, aren't they? But certainly from the perception from outside the region, is they're the flagship. When you're down here and when you're embedded in it, you realise that there's a heck of a lot. There's all sorts of other stuff going on from scholars downwards to the number of kids that are playing, the number of schools that are playing the game. The amateur club scene is expanding. Every person I ever speak to from any of the amateur clubs down here, they've added another junior team this year, or a women's team. So there's no doubt the game is thriving outside that professional top tier at the Broncos. Who's to say, to be fair? I mean, look, Broncos are going to go down at the end of the season. It's inevitable. But who's to say that a season next year where they might start winning some games might not help them rebuild properly? A winning team, people might come to see a winning team more than they come and see, a team that's going to consistently lose, conceivably, all their games this season. That's my dreaded fear, is they could actually go through the entire season without winning a game.
Is there danger then that they'll do more damage this year in what they're doing than if they weren't around? Because like you say, potentially there is, positives for next year if they did get relegated. Although to be fair, the impact of, would they still keep an academy, the money that would be put in, the players that they would have, etc., would it comes into question, doesn't it? But the worry is all they're going to do is they're going to have had 17, 15, 16 months of downward spiral, that they're going to be at a very low ebb, aren't they, if they do bottom out?
It's going to be an all-time low. I think we've got the positives we have to try to take are hopefully that this season or next season there'll be another couple of players who come through who show what the qualities are of players down here and the systems down here. It wasn't that long ago that we had Tony Clubb and Dan Sargison playing in a World Club Challenge, So two members of the Wigan side were actually products. We had one lad from Gravesend and one lad, admittedly born in Australia, but who's come through the system at HEMEL, So that's in the best team in our country. Yeah. Two of the players in that team are from the system down here. So we should never lose sight of that. So however grim, trying to sound off on a positive note, however grim those tendencies are, we always got to keep one eye on the fact that there is a conveyor belt here. And if we're ever going to beat Australia, if we're ever going to compete at the very highest level, we need as much help as we can get. And if that comes from Gravesend and Hemel Hempstead, well, so be it. That's brilliant,
Nigel Wiskar there of the Sunday People. Good man who knows his rugby league in the south. Very, very well involved with Sussex Merlins. And in fact, he was part of the panel, the on-report panel for Super League TV. I had a chat with Tony Ray, Joe Mabou and Nigel in there as well. I'm told it's due out imminently, sometime this week. So it may well be online now if you're listening to this podcast. Go to the Super League TV. Either go to their website or find them on YouTube, and you'll find the latest video about the sport of rugby league in London and the South. A nice round table, although we weren't sat in the round, and there was the table. A great discussion with Tony Ray, Joe Mabou, Nigel and myself. Another bit of information just to give you: the first meeting of the London Independent Supporters Association is on Thursday this week, Thursday the 20th of March, down in SE1. All the details if you go to RLDS, so Rugby League London Independent Supporters Trust it stands for, .wordpress.com, you'll find them. So RLDS, LIST, and they did initially set out to be a trust. They're currently going to form as an association. It's their first meeting on Thursday. Any fan can be involved, any fan can help out, and they will over time hopefully develop into a fully associated supporters trust. I'm sure that will all be outlined in the meeting, and we may well feature them on the programme next week. And talking of discussions, there was fabulous discussions about the way forward for Broncos on Twitter over the last week or so. If you do fancy having a discussion, joining in at Ian Ramsdale, or use the hashtag RLDS for Rugby League Down South, and that will get you involved in everything. And good to see as well that many people not confusing Broncos situation with the game down in the South too. Broncos not having a great time. The game in the South doing reasonably well at the moment. So as ever, plenty of discussions to be had on the Facebook page, on Twitter. And of course, if you want to get your thoughts on the podcast, you can always email a considered view to rldownsouth@gmail.com. Now on to the Challenge Cup. No home draws for Southern teams in the fourth round when the big boys of Super League entered. Scholars going to Championship champions Sheffield. Broncos away at Derby rivals Catalans. And HEMEL are travelling to Doncaster. If you look at the full draw as well, there's going to be a fair few Championship clubs in the fifth round. 5 Super League teams will go, because there's 5 all Super League ties. So I thought I'd catch up with the HEMEL coach Troy Perkins. A trip to Doncaster, and please do excuse the extraneous noises here. Nothing I could do about them, unfortunately. I was trying to be clever and record the interview over the internet, so it's not phone call quality, but better quality. As you'll hear, kind of came out a bit worse. I hope you can bear with it. There's some interesting stuff in here, particularly the final few minutes, but apologies once again for the whistling noises in the background of my conversation with Troy Perkins. What did you make of, first of all, your draw? A trip to Doncaster, not an easy place to go to. It could have been a worse draw, or could have been a better draw.
Yeah, no disrespect to Doncaster. You know, all the semi-professional clubs would like Super League clubs. You know, we're no different. You know, an away draw to a Wigan or a Warrington would have been ideal, just for my players to experience that atmosphere and playing against Super League players, just like we did last year against Wakefield. Also, a better draw might have been a team that's still in our league that we're a fair chance of beating, like an Oldham or a Hunslet. However, Doncaster are up with one of the top teams in Championship, so it's going to be a very, very big ask for us to go there and get a result. But I suppose on the positive, we're going to a really nice stadium, so the experience won't be too bad. We could have been going to one of those northern clubs that have got rundown stadiums and stuff. So in that respect, it'll still be a good experience. But obviously, I wouldn't be expecting loads of fans or anything like that to be there at the game.
Do you know what, Troy? I've got a really bad whistle, so I'm just going to try and dial the line down and dial it up again just to see if it connects better.
All right, mate.
All right, hang on. Yes, it may well sound like Troy was boiling a kettle on an old stove with a whistling kettle in the background, but no, technical problems with the line on Skype. Here follows the rest of the interview. When we redialed it back up, we did continue to get the whistle, so there is, it's not great sound quality, but some interesting things that Troy was saying. It was an experiment that we tried. So if you can bear with it, then please do. If not, you might want to skip on 10 minutes or so and have a listen to the next section. Although the final 2 or 3 minutes of Troy are certainly worth listening to. What are your chances of being in the fifth round draw, do you think, then?
I'd imagine they'd be pretty slim, as I said. Like Doncaster are sitting up near the top of the Championship, but all we can do is go there and do our best, whether that was against Doncaster or whether we drew a team or whatever, and we come away, with our heads held high, and that's all I can ask. So, anything can happen on any day, and there would have been bigger upsets in the Challenge Cup than us beating a Doncaster. So anything's possible, but we know we're going to have to beat our best, and they're probably going to be, a bit complacent and be sort of average on the day. But anything's possible.
What have you made of your season so far then for HEMEL? I know it's early days, but I guess you had a very positive result when you played away and sort of snatched a draw. But what have you made of the opening few games?
Yeah, we're still got a lot to improve on, especially our respect for the ball. The opening game against Hunslet, I thought were actually pretty good for a lot of the game, and even though a 28-0 scoreline sort of doesn't really reflect that, we could have been in front at half time. We got a try disallowed, and we bombed a couple of 2-on-1s that would have resulted in tries as well. So, but when you're playing against quality opposition, you've got to take your chances, and unfortunately we didn't that day, and a couple of lapses in concentration in defence cost us. But the Hunslet game, I wasn't overly disappointed, because I thought there was, the errors we made we can rectify pretty easy, and against Oldham we made some of those errors in the first half and put us sort of under pressure, but to our credit we come back and obviously snatched a draw, and that's one thing that I can't fault in our team. We've got plenty of character, and we never give in, and even last year we didn't get beat by any big scores, even against the top opposition. We just battled on and never give up, and that's been the same this year. So it's been alright. It's as I said, there's a lot of improvement, and hopefully the next couple of weeks we have Gateshead and South Wales, so they're two very winnable games. We can get 2 results there, and that'll put us sort of up near the top of the ladder again.
And then it's a big derby against London Scholars. A little bit after that, isn't it? You get a little bit of a break after the next 2 games. But in terms of Gateshead, South Wales Scorpions, and Championship 1, we've talked a lot of Championship 1 on the programme this year. There were years gone by where you could not necessarily predict the scores, but there are certain teams, certain games that you thought, okay, it's going to go one way or the other, and it was pretty obvious to tell. But it does look like this year, coming up against Gateshead, a team that hadn't won a game in years until a couple of years ago, and now are really competing. Okay, the division's changed, but it's a very, very competitive division.
I've said it all along. It is a good competition, and after every game, and you get on the website and look at the other scores, there's always upsets. The first week, who would have predicted Oxford beating Scholars, and the second week, Gloucester beat South Wales pretty easy, and we got a draw at Oldham, which probably wasn't expected, and I think it's going to be like that all the way through. It's an exciting competition, and as you said, Gateshead, I only mentioned to the boys last night that Gateshead are a very good team, and I watched them play Oxford online the other day, and they blew Oxford away in the last 20 minutes, and as you said, they've had that sort of stigma attached to them where they're a team that doesn't win games, but that certainly changed last year and again this year, and with the help of Hull KR, I think they had 3 dual reg players with them against Oxford, and I'm expecting the same this week. They're a decent team, and they've got a good coach, and said all the teams can beat anyone on their day, which makes it a great competition.
And how crucial for you is your home form? Because, I heard it was a very successful, in terms of a club day, a very successful day, your first home game of the season against Hunslet. You're trying to build the sport. You're trying to get people in HEMEL and the surrounding areas to come and watch you. I don't think anyone is ever happy with the attendances that they get, whatever the level is. But, how crucial is your home form and those home games in what the club in general are doing for the future?
Yeah, well, result-wise, it's massive. I think we lost 2 games at home last year, and would be aiming to sort of around that mark again, which would put us in good stead for for where we finish on the table. But in regards to the crowd, it's about putting in a good performance, so people want to come back and watch. And I think as I said, the 28-0 result against Hunza didn't reflect the game, and I think people walked away from that game knowing that we are a decent team and we will be competitive, and we played some good rugby. So we have done a lot of work in the local area promoting that first game. So yeah, there was a good crowd, but the thing that obviously we struggle with now, not having a development officer and not having the presence in the schools, is gonna sort of put us back a bit from where we were a couple of years ago. Because obviously you want to be focusing on those young kids and giving them an experience at the rugby, and their parents coming along and being prepared to take them, every second weekend. But at the moment we're struggling in that area, which is unfortunate. But I think we had 500 there for that game, and if we could get that every game, it would be fantastic. But we know there's a lot of work to do to get crowds like that, and especially from 2 years, 3 years ago, where you didn't have to come, you didn't have to pay to watch HEMEL play, and now to ask people to stump up 10 or 12 quid, whatever the admission is, it's a big difference. So that's the other challenge of getting those people through the gate again.
And what about the the development staff that you mentioned that you don't have anymore? That was all a central funding issue. That the money that was being given by the governing body, their money was cut. It was then cut around the clubs and around the region. What do clubs, or what can clubs do in order to get back up to those levels? Because obviously it all comes down to money that clubs, Championship 1 clubs don't necessarily have at the moment. What is the key to getting us back down that route, but avoiding that central funding? I mean, it's a huge question, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, youth development's massive, and as you said, there's a cost involved. So, I mean, ideally there'd be other pots of money that we could tap into, but these days it's very difficult. Or have a bigger volunteer base, which is a key as well. But the presence in the schools is very difficult because people obviously work and have other commitments. So I think the youth teams is very important, and we've got Mitchell Squires down there running the youth section, and that's coming along okay. But again, it's just it's very difficult to recruit children when you haven't got that presence in the schools. Hemel's not a big area, not a big town, and there's a lot of football and rugby union presence like most other towns in the south of England. So it's difficult, and I don't really have the answer. It was hard enough when we had a development officer, let alone when we don't. And it's just we've got Danny Stocks running the mini section, which I think that's going pretty good. Danny's a passionate guy about rugby league and has been at the club since he was a child himself. So hopefully that will develop, and then that will progress through to the older levels over the coming years. That's the best we've got at the minute. We don't. We've got a lot of focus on that first team because that's important. But obviously we can't lose focus of those mini and youth teams as well.
And Troy, we've seen a couple of Broncos players go to Scholars this year, sort of on another topic altogether, but dual registration and stuff. You obviously had Mason Caton Brown and Mike Bichet last year. Are you expecting to get any dual reg players from Broncos this year?
Yeah, no, we're not. I spoke to Tony a couple of weeks ago in regards to the dual registration and how it really worked well for us last year, as you said, with Mason and Bish, But for his own reasons, he's pretty much made it clear that any players available for dual reg will go to Scholars this season, which from my point of view is a little bit disappointing. But at the end of the day, they're Broncos players and they can send them where they like. I thought Mason and Bish thrived when they were down with us last year and actually went back to Broncos as good Super League players and finished the season in Super League. So we were happy with the what we provided for them players last year. But obviously Tony thought it's better that they go to Scholars. They all the players go to the one club, which again is sort of, I suppose there's difference of opinions that it's probably better to share the players out amongst the southern clubs and help individual clubs out. But they've all been sent there, and to be honest, the first week they sent a couple there, and Scholars got beat. So it doesn't always work, and we've gone down another route. We spoke to some other Super League clubs about dual registration, and they were really positive discussions. But the biggest issue was the travel, asking players to travel 3 hours to come down to HEMEL to play, and if we're going to get it for training as well. So that's the only thing that stopped a couple of Super League clubs from actually linking up with us. So that was a shame, but we've gone down another route now, and we've got a couple of players on loan because we were a bit short in the front row department. So we got 2 players on loan from Keighley, and we got a young hooker on loan from North Wales Crusaders. So in a sense, it's a little bit better in a way because you've got it for a month. Yeah, it's not just a week-to-week proposition like dual reggies, and also those players are coming because they want to come, and they're hungry to play well and try and get back in that first team. Where we didn't have any issues with the players that come last year, but I can imagine at various championship clubs, if the Super League player gets dropped, they're not always they don't always produce for that championship club. So we got, I think we've got a formula that's worked all right for us so far. The guys that have come have performed and done really well, and I think that's something that we'll pursue for the rest of the season.
And I guess as well, Broncos at the moment, they don't have a wealth of a squad, I guess. So is there an element that they don't have that many players to potentially spread out among too many clubs?
Yeah, no, 100% right, and that's another thing Tony said, that they wouldn't have a lot of players. Their squad is quite thin, and there probably would only be, if everyone's fit, 2, 3, 4 players available every week. But he preferred that they all went to the one club. We haven't ruled it out completely because if there is down the track, if we are struggling in a position, and I can speak to Tony, and if Scholars are happy with the players they've got and don't require some of the Broncos, well there may be an option there, but that's something that's down the track, and at this minute I'm not thinking about. As I said, it's more that loan signings that has worked well for us in the first few games, and I think that's something that we'll continue to look at throughout the season when we do require players due to injuries or whatever.
So yes, that's Troy Perkins and his whistling kettle of a Skype line. Thank you for bearing with it if you did. Interesting things from Troy and what they're doing, but planning for the future and trying to keep themselves going and keep themselves being successful. So best of luck to them for the rest of the season. So now you'll pretty much understand why the title of the podcast is called what it's called, with all the extra noises in the background of Troy's interview. I do hope you could bear that. Apologies once again for the sound quality. Like I said, trying to be too smart and too clever doing it over the internet. Fingers crossed more of that in the future, and they'll be of much better quality. On to the London Skolars then. They travel to Sheffield, of course, where the Broncos went in the quarter-final last year. Scholars as themselves have had a few weeks off with back-to-back byes, if you don't mind me, after one game of the season. Coach Joe Mabou saying that really it's been a reasonable start for them, even though they lost the first game of the season and they've had a couple of weeks off. I know you've had a couple of weeks off in terms of bye weeks, but a draw for the Challenge Cup, and you get a bit of a tough draw, don't you, really? No Super League home fixture or having a Super League side come visit the New River, but a very tough trip to Sheffield.
Yeah, certainly. We're looking forward to it, as we do every game, and obviously looking forward to it, to getting back into a competition as we had a bye week from the competition.
That's it. I mean, it was not an ideal start to your season, but then you've had 2 weeks off, haven't you? So people always say, is it good to have a rest, or is it good to play the weekend after? I mean, how has it been for your squad looking back on those few weeks now? Has it been a good time, or has it been tough?
No, I think for me, contrary to what it may seem, it's actually been the best start we've had in terms of my experience here so far. We've managed to at least pick up a bonus point, and we only lost by a few points. And I think for me, that's going to be what can I say? The plus for me, that I've got to look at the positives on that respect. But we're working hard, and we're not pleased with how we started. Even though I just said that's been probably our best start, and on reflection, that has been in terms of points and scoring them and conceding them.
Because last year it was a bit of a slow start for the side. You probably didn't win as many games early on as you'd have wanted to. Is it difficult in Championship 1 and the way things are done? Because it is all sort of late on, isn't it? Sometimes you don't get players sorted until a couple of weeks before the season. It's not like you start your pre-season back in September, November like the Super League sides are. It can be a bit of a late start, which must impact on your season a little bit.
Yes, it has an impact, but I'm sure everyone else is have the same issues, and we all try and deal with them as best we can. And, I think the main thing for me that I would find ideal is to have the players that I want to have for the season all at one stage at one time at the start of pre-season. That I've not managed that to have that yet. Everything else I know I can't control, but I believe I can control a little bit more when I have the players, to start training and working together with them. Because I think the earlier I've got the bulk of the squad or the whole squad, the better I reckon will be, and the more time as well it will give us to get used to each other and for people to get used to playing with each other and communicating with each other and playing with and just knowing each other in general.
When it gets to this stage of the season, are you still looking to make changes, improvements, and bring in other players, or have you sort of pretty much settled on what's going to be your squad initially this part of the year?
No, I think you can never predict too far into the future with sport because of injuries and because of different elements of people's commitments and no one knows really when someone's going to stop playing or get injured or just don't turn up. So our recruitment for the year is ongoing. Our improvement to the squad is ongoing. The fact that we train every week, it's to make our team stronger. So everything that we do is to make sure that we're as strong as we can be that season or that week, and every year, we week to week, month to month, we're working on improving the squad, improving the club, and all round improvement in every area possible.
You've got Oldham at the New River this weekend. You've got a fabulous ticket deal for people to come along and watch. But you seem to have had some big games with Oldham over the last few years. I dare sort of try and create a rivalry that isn't necessarily there, but they've been a big scalp, haven't they? And sort of there have been some big games against them over the last few years.
Well, I think the reason why we had such big games over the years with them, certainly in the years that I've been here as head coach, is because of the way they play. They play a very pure, clean rugby. If I can explain, the play, it's a no-nonsense style rugby. They don't try and disturb the rock, and they work the rock well and they defend well, and they run hard and they pass well, and the combination between the halves are good, and they kick well. So they do all the little things well that you need to do in rugby league in order to be. And whenever you play, well, whenever the team that I coach, when we play against those type of teams, we thrive on those type of games, because we know that the rock is not going to be slow. We know that teams are not going to purposely try and impinge you from keeping a clean rock, keeping a clean game. They play a clean game. There's no there's no holding down. There's no deliberate leg loose. It's all about them making good contact, dominating the rock in the right way by getting the right number of bodies and everyone peeling off correctly. So it's a joy to watch them play, and therefore it's a joy to play against them, and that's what makes it such a great game and a great spectacle whenever we come against them.
And we've been talking to the HEMEL head coach, Troy Perkins, and he was saying, the dual registration with Broncos players at the moment is predominantly with scholars, and you'll be getting their players. Again, Broncos haven't got a massive squad, so I'm not sure how many players you'll be getting. But is that something that sort of will be a great advantage to you this year in respect of getting those players? And I guess, your relationship and your friendship with Tony Ray has helped sort of secure that, I guess, for this year.
I believe my personal belief is that we each year, it's always been my personal opinion. We can't rely on anyone really, and we've got to make sure our squad is as strong as it can be. With regards to the relationship we have with the Broncos, we've always had a good relationship, and even before this dual registration came to being or came to existence. I remember when I wasn't finding form in Super League, I requested to come and play for Scholars for a while. So the relationship has always been there, and as you mentioned earlier, Broncos themselves are going for a tough time, and they need time to sort of get in the bodies that they need around to be playing for them, and so it makes no sense for them to have two teams on dual reg, in my opinion, and with regards to an advantage or disadvantage, it makes no difference to me. The difference that it does make in terms of the advantage is having quality players coming and playing for us. But when we don't have those quality players coming down, we still got to survive as a team. We still got to survive as a squad, and we do that, and that's the main thing. And that's what I find the main strength that we have as a club. That with and without those players, we can still hold our own.
And your club yet still to announce sort of where potentially you're going to be playing, or confirm where you're going to be playing your games when you have to move away from the New River. Is that something that you pay attention to, that you show an interest in? Have you been consulted over the pitches and the grounds that you'll play, or are you just getting ready to be told where to turn up on what day?
It's always been the case with me. I think as a player, when I was playing, I didn't care which pitch I played on, and I have the same approach and mentality with the players. The players just want to play. A lot of the players that I coach, if not all of them, they just want to play. And I think you stick them on the moon and you give them a pair of boots and they still have a go. So that's our attitude towards the whole situation, and whichever pitch that Howard is tirelessly working on provides for us, we'll get on there and just give it our all, and we see no difference to us being anywhere else.
So those are the thoughts of the London Skolars head coach Joe Mabu, and like I say, going to be tough for all of our sides really in the next round of the Challenge Cup, with Broncos away at Catalans, HEMEL, as we mentioned, going to Doncaster earlier on, and Scholars going up to Sheffield. And we should just add as well that because we're following the route that the South West London Chargers would have followed in the Challenge Cup, then I was hoping to talk to Milford Marlins over the last couple of weeks. They're the side that beat South West London Chargers down in London, to find out what they've made of the experience of playing in London. Unfortunately, haven't been able to get hold of them. Unfortunately, they were knocked out by Barrow at the weekend, so I wanted to find out how they'd done in that one, but again, couldn't get hold of them this week. So now we'll turn our attention to Barrow. And as for their Challenge Cup draw, because of course this is the route that South West London Chargers would have taken as they go through. So Barrow in the next round of the Cup, if I scroll through, they'll be at Keighley, another away tie for one of our sides, but we'll be supporting Barrow and keeping our eye on them as they play at Keighley in the 4th round of the Challenge Cup. And finally, let's just hear now from the Broncos' latest or newest debutant in ATELEA VEA, who played at the weekend against Wakefield. It ended in another defeat, didn't it, for the side? VEA arriving on a plane on Thursday. Or was it VEA arriving on a plane on Thursday? And here he is after the match with Steve Devonshire.
So obviously you made your debut today, pretty tough. You've not been in the country that long, so yeah. How was it for you?
I was pretty excited to finally get out there. I knew I was coming here for a while, so it's been a long time coming, but the preparation was, obviously tough, but I'm just happy to get that first one out of the way, and it was good.
You spent a lot of time training at home until you got the visas through and stuff, is that right?
Yeah, I did. I had to do a lot of stuff on my own, and obviously it wasn't ideal, but I tried my best to keep up and kept busy doing different things. So I think those little things helped.
And the prospect of coming to London is obviously a big thing at a stage in your career and stuff as well, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It was obviously London being the city it is. One of those things, opportunities that you want to take, and where I am at this stage of my life, it was kind of fit. So I'm happy that I'm here and I'm enjoying this city. I love it.
And have you had much time to look around?
I've been going from training home and still jet lagged, but I think the people here are pretty good and really nice, and my team have been really welcoming, and I just take that as the city reflecting.
And is there, at the early stages, but is there much difference between the Super League and the NRL and that over? Have you noticed in that first game?
I think the size of some of them boppers running around on the field today was one of the main things that I noticed. But yeah, I haven't played in a while, so I've almost forgotten what playing was like, and I struggled there for a bit in the first in my first stint. But I think it's obviously a competitive league, and there's some talent out there. Obviously I've watched a bit from back home, and there's blokes like Ali Lawatiti and some of the blokes that I've looked up to when I was younger, coming up playing against them was it was awesome experience. And
in your first couple of days off, when you get them, are you going to look around any of London? Is there anything you've got on a list of places to go?
Or? 100%. I've got a bucket list. I've got a couple of friends all over the place, I'm looking forward to ticking a couple of those things off the bucket list. My main focus at the moment is just footy, so I'll put in the effort there and reward myself hopefully later on.
Yeah, and you've got a big game against Leeds coming up as well. That must be quite an experience to look forward to, going to HEMEL and close stadium, big crowd.
It is. I'm looking forward to it. We've got a lot of work that we need to do, but in saying that, I think there's a couple of positives we can take out of today's game, and I'm looking forward to these challenges, and it's going to be good.
Thank you to Steve for taking over the responsibilities of Rugby League Down South at the weekend and posing the questions there to ATELEA VEA. And we'll have more of that in the future. If you do want to be involved in the podcast or on the Facebook page, or if you think you can offer Rugby League Down South something, whether it be, like I say, on the podcast as audio, or maybe on the Facebook page as information or links, and then let us know. We'd love to involve, trying to build up a little bit of a group who can expand and build on Rugby League Down South so far. Broncos themselves, they faced Leeds on Friday. It's going to be tough. They meet, of course, Brian McDermott, their former coach, who, depending on which stats you read, a little bit unfair this week for the RFL to compare the stats for Broncos under the Broncos name rather than as London, because they sort of omitted the fact that, of course, in round 3 back in 2011, Harlequins Rugby League won 36-26 away at Leeds. It was the first game that Brian McDermott, in fact, had faced his former club whilst coaching at Leeds. But if that was kind of skipped over, and the RFL saying that the Leeds have won the last 12 Headingley meetings with the capital side as London Broncos since 2001, which is true, absolutely 100% fact. But they kind of omitted those Harlequins Rugby League years, which I thought was slightly unfair, so I thought I'd mention it on the podcast. So it was only back in 2011, the last time the Broncos won at Leeds. It's got to be difficult, though, isn't it, this year, you've got to say. It's unlikely to happen. I'm still standing by. Broncos will win at least one game this year. That's my prediction. I think their youth and exuberance will win them a game this year. And that's it then for another Rugby League Down South. Thank you very much for listening. Again, slightly shorter version in terms of content for this week. Plenty of stuff happening. I've got plenty of other stuff going on in other aspects of my life. I'll try and bring you as much as I can in terms of news for Rugby League Down South each week. For many more discussions, look at the Facebook page or on Twitter, follow at Ian Ramsdale. Use the hashtag RLDS whenever talking about issues for Rugby League Down South. So thank you for listening. Back with another programme very soon.